based on their generation. I think this is a great quote that really sets in your mind kind of a reminder that we all are a little bit different, even within our own generation. And so if you're just thinking about the people who sat in the lunchroom with you when you were younger, or even the lunchroom right now with you, if you're working with a lot of people who are similar of age, there's a lot of differences just there, right? And you think about that huge, large workroom or huge, large lunchroom you got a picture of right there. So many differences in terms of communication and interests, and even just the type of experiences these folks are going into. So if we're trying to categorize all of them simply because of their age, that's not going to be ideal. It's not going to work for a workplace situation, especially. Nevertheless, I do believe, and so does Al, that it's important to at least get an idea of, what is some of the trends for each generation. So, and I know that many of you possibly were interested in that. So we want to make sure we provided some of that, but keep in mind that this is general for the generations, and that people within each of the generations are going to have different experiences and different thoughts. But here we go, starting with the baby boomers. Typical age range of being born in 1946 to 1960. You will see different age ranges all over if you try to Wikipedia it or Google it. So it's a general range. So if you think you're not a boomer and you were born during these ranges, don't worry about it. Point yourself based on where you think you are, and know that ultimately you are your individual person.
We have different age ranges in this presentation even, so yeah, maybe you'll fit into a later one if you don't like this one.
But for baby boomers right now, they make up 24% of the population, over 70 million of them. Family values and situations, very strong family values, often coming from multi-child families, really high respect for elders. In terms of general values and attributes, they see themselves as independent, liberal, experimental, free-spirited. Workplace values, very strong work ethic, loyal to their job, strong group workforce. Global events, this was post-World War II they're being born into, looking at the peace and love movement of the 60s, rock and roll. In terms of icons and significant events, you're thinking about the assassination of JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr., and then for communication mediums, again, we've already kind of noted that face-to-face seems to be a winner across the generation, especially with the people that we've talked to here. But especially for this generation, face-to-face being a number one, in addition to radio, TV, and print and direct mail.
With slides like these, it always makes me concerned when there's not a percentage. Like you can see, obviously, that there's 24% of the population in the top line there. But when you're talking about strong family values or multi-child families, there's clearly a percentage that's associated with that, but we don't know necessarily what that is. So that's where we want to definitely caution against overgeneralization at this point, even though we're talking about some overall summaries. But the global events, those are quantifiable. You can actually see what happened during that time. And the icons, there's many, many more than that probably, but these are the ones that we just found as sample illustrations. We can talk about that a little bit more. So Generation X, that's my generation, 16% of the population. The first latchkey children I thought was interesting. If you don't know what that means, it means that you went home from school and your parents were both possibly still at work, so that you had to be home alone after school. So that's that reference there. You can see all the different descriptions there. The global events, I was trying to remember specifically what I remembered as a Gen Xer. So I'm a little bit younger, apparently not toward the old end of the Gen Xers, but Vietnam ended in 1975. So I would have been, what, 8? So I can kind of remember that and seeing that on our little black and white TV, believe it or not, at home. And then the moon landing, I do not remember because I was 2, but those are key things that happened during that time. So, and those are easily identifiable as specific things that happened in history. And then I don't know that my icons were Madonna and Michael Jackson.
Who would you say your icons were?
Probably like Reggie Jackson would have been, because I really followed baseball. I liked the Yankees a little bit at that time. And then, people like, I don't know, Bob Barker, The Price is Right, but I listen to bands, the classic bands like The Who and Zeppelin and Styx, and even some Adam Ant, that kind of stuff. So maybe there's a lot of different influences from that time of my life. Communication mediums, I thought that was pretty accurate too. So
did you wear a lot of tie-dye?
I did wear some tie-dye, but I thought that was more associated. Matt and I were talking about these graphics, or maybe that's the parents of Gen X that are wearing these different outfits. when you go back, maybe that's the parents of baby boomers that were wearing those. I don't know, maybe. Make your own judgments on that.
So Generation Y, otherwise known as millennials, this is the group that I identify with. 25% of the population is Gen Y. Here we start seeing some more single-parent children, divorce becoming more common, loss of traditions. Again, though, I think about my own experience. I had both parents. I was a latchkey kid, just as Al was describing. And we had very strong traditions in our family. So I don't necessarily identify with these areas, but just kind of noting that more of these things are popping up at this point for people born during this range. Values, optimistic, independent, also conservative, open-minded, entrepreneurial. I think the entrepreneurial, you're going to see a lot more as we go on with these slides and talking especially into Gen Z. Workplace values, seeking good work-life balance, strong sense of entitlement. I was one of the ones who took the activity, and I do not believe I checked work-life balance. And so that was one thing that I do respect, but I think I have a little different view on what is actually is balance, and how much, my life is also about work. So I think it's just a little bit different there. Global events, rise of technology, environmental issues, terrorism, all these things. I do remember exactly where I was on 9/11 in high school. So certainly that sticks out to me. Icons, I don't think Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg is an icon to me, I'll be honest. On this one, I would say more so my parents, which we'll see in the next slide, would be icons to me, and certainly people in this world. I don't know if I had any strong icons growing up until maybe my teen years, and maybe thinking about the Obama administration more in terms of politics of things, people who stuck out to me. And the communication mediums, I do love my smartphone and email, but I am not big on the Snapchat, not big on a lot of the social media things, which is surprising since at one point I was a social media coordinator in my job, but it's not one of those mediums that I really love. So happy with the smartphone, but I'll stick to face-to-face if I can.
I always think work-life balance is interesting because lots of people select that as a preference, but it means different things to different people. Like for me, myself, work-life balance to me means that I don't have to work at home. I do my work at work and then don't have to work at home. But for lots of people in younger generations, I think work-life balance has been being able to work anytime, anywhere, and being able to play anytime, anywhere. Being able to check your Facebook or social media at work, and then also being able to do some work at home, that kind of thing. So it's interesting to see what people value and how those are differing for each generation. And that can be part of the discussion topics that you have as a part of your work. Gen Z, we'll talk a lot more about this coming up, but this is just kind of a summary that we have. About 24% of the population. So a large chunk coming into the workforce. You can see the family values differences and changes over the years. Definitely internet savvy. I'm puzzled by the conservative list here, but I'm not sure what they're referring to there. Impatient, I think, comes from having everything so accessible. That we talked about our 8-second attention span that's shorter than a goldfish's nowadays, because we have everything that's so immediately accessible via just a quick Google search or watching a YouTube video on how to do something. So I think that probably fits in pretty nicely with that. You can see the different workplace values, the multitaskers, the adventurous, seeking flexibility, and openness. Lots of entrepreneurial spirit in that generation, and wanting to do work that's entrepreneurial in nature, not necessarily start their own business, but build some things as a part of their work. Let's see, Taylor Swift and Roger Federer, do you think, were the icons for Gen Z?
I think for some, I don't know, not for me, but then again, I'm not Gen Z.
We're not Gen Z. Someone comment in if you're from Gen Z and you want to add some icon to the list here, and we'll add that for you. Communication mediums, obviously have had smartphones their whole life, probably digital, FaceTime, Skype, Hangouts, Instant Messenger. So
yeah, I don't think they're talking about AIM or like AOL Instant Messenger. I think they're talking about like WeChat or GroupMe, some of those things. I know that my students are really into right now.
Oh, speaking of AOL, I got an email today that said that I was getting a $2.8 million money transfer to my account.
Oh, congratulations.
From a bank in New York, from their AOL account.
That's amazing.
I think it's legit. So I'll be retired.
It probably was a prince that sent you it too.
No, it was not a prince that sent it. Don't fall for those people.
So another thing, we're going to talk about some activities now and things that I particularly use in the Career Leadership Academy, but we've also used outside of here with other students that could help at any organization kind of get to understanding how people work and how there are a lot of similarities, and yet there's a lot of great uniqueness that we can utilize with each other. So one of those things that my guess is some of you have heard of, hopefully, is the Gallup StrengthsFinder. So Gallup used a lot of research from the Clifton StrengthsFinder and created this assessment many years ago. And basically what it looks at is it asks questions for people all around the world about what allows them to do the best work that they possibly can. When do they feel like they do the best work, right? And based on this research, they're able to come up with themes of talent. And what are these themes of talent that everybody has? 34 themes of them. But some of them rise higher to the top than others. And so if you take this assessment, which is pretty thorough and it takes about 20 or 30 minutes, you get your top 5 natural themes of talent. So these are the things that you do well on a daily basis. You can just wake up and do them, and you don't have to do much thinking about it. And so the idea being that if you focus on your strengths and the things you do naturally well on a daily basis, they don't really feel like work. And you'll really enjoy more of the work you can do, especially if you can find work or opportunities to use your strengths. But also with the idea being that you can always use your strengths. It's just reframing the problem or issue that you're doing. The other thing is, here at the University of Iowa, we use this for a new initiative called the Be Better at Iowa initiative that I'm fortunate to be a part of on the executive committee, in which now all of our students here at the University of Iowa come in during their first year and take the StrengthsFinder. So it's already setting up a conversation with the students about the things they do well, and they're just naturally able to do in their classes, in their internships, in their work, and it really creates just an avenue for a conversation and a connection with the student. And then we take that and we pair that up with what the student wants to do, particularly in the Career Center. What is the skills that the student's looking to gain to go into whatever career they're looking for? And the nice thing about the StrengthsFinder is there's so much robustness to it. There's so many activities and things you can Google and find. The assessment itself only costs $10, and you can even buy the book that is shown right there. You get the book that goes through all the themes and gives you the free code attached to it, and the book's about the same price. So it's really nice, and it's something that a lot of organizations I know of have asked for to do, to kind of go through and have someone come in. Strengths, if you go to the StrengthsQuest website or just the Gallup website to learn more, that you can actually have someone come in and do a StrengthsFinder training with your group. It can get a little pricey, but it's something that it's based on positive psychology, and usually by the end, people are pretty excited about what they found out and how they can work with each other. So another thing going off the Gallup StrengthsFinder, Gallup has looked at over the years what are the top 5 strengths by generation. And you can find this on their website, and they identified those top 5s for millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, and traditionalists. And you can see just from that, there are some cross similarities. Responsibility is in each one of them, and so is achiever. Now, they have not released anything for Gen Z yet, but because we've got an in, right? We got a little bit of in with Be Better. I was able to find out what was the top 5 for the Iowa students last year. So of all the first-year students at Iowa, all 100% of them took this. These were the top 5 at Iowa. So again, achiever coming up #1 for Iowa. So there's going to be some similarities here. And again, the idea with strengths being that we have all 34 of these themes in us. There's just certain ones that rise closer to the top than others. It creates a great conversation to have, and something that you can talk with people about. What is your passion? What do you get? What really energizes you about work, and how can we find ways to make sure that you do the job that you're hired for, but also feel like it's not super hard on a daily basis either. We like comics in this. Yeah, we like to have a little bit of fun here. And this was another one that we found in terms of communication and conversation that occurs. And so this is actually one almost exactly like a conversation that happened in an online course that I teach here. So for our Academy program, our courses are offered online, and it's a great opportunity to be able to have distance learners take our courses, and non-traditional students from generations outside of Gen Z and millennials take our courses, who are looking to come and complete a bachelor's degree, come back to school, complete their degree, whatever they're looking to do. And there was a conversation that was had between me and a group of students just last year about how difficult it was for this group to work together, because one of the members was a boomer and did not want to use WeChat or IMing or any of those type of apps that the students were going to. And that was the students' first thought, who identified as Gen Z and millennial, of how they would like to communicate. And so we had to work as a group and kind of think through how, was the best method for communicating for this group, and a little bit of a give and take on both, so that there could be some email, some face-to-face, and also some IMing too. Because I was not going to tell them they had to use email, they had to use something. Part of the course is for them to kind of figure out how to become a group and how to work effectively. And so it was a great example of them trying to think about how they prefer to communicate, and if they needed to flex their communication style to make sure the group could achieve what it wanted to. In the same course that I've been talking about, we do focus specifically on communication styles. And we use some text from What's My Communication Style by E.M. Russo. And if you actually Google What's My Communication Style, you'll get a whole bunch of info about it, because it is a assessment you can take to kind of determine what communication style you identify with. We don't have our students take the assessment anymore, because we feel that the chapter kind of gets to the point that we want to get them to. But we do have a point in the chapter that has this grid that asks them to check off the ways they prefer to communicate. And they go through all 4 of the quadrants, and they check off as many things as they think sound like them. And if we look onto this next slide here, these are the 4 communication styles that are identified through the What's My Communication Style inventory. And we have a conversation about, what does it mean to have the majority of your check marks in the direct area? Well, that means that you have high assertiveness. You like to tell people your thoughts and tell people, what the next step is, or what you believe the next step is. And you also control a lot of your emotion. You try not to let your emotion get the best of you. And the complete opposite would be someone who might have a considerate style, who asks a lot of questions first, more focused on the relationship, trying to think about what is everyone else's thoughts before telling everyone else their thoughts. And they may display a high amount of emotion and show a lot of interest and show a lot of care with working with people. There's no right or wrong communication style. We make that clear with our students, but there is a tendency for everyone to be in one quadrant. And even without taking the assessment, we're able to use this, and the students find that it generally describes them pretty well. So then we have a conversation of how can you flex your style? How can you lean in so that if you're a spirited person, you're able to maybe bring down a little bit of your energy and ask some more questions, especially if you're finding that you're in one quadrant. If you're a spirited person and everyone else you're working with is systematic, you might want to think about how can you flex your style. And same thing for your group mates. How could they flex their style to work better with you too?
All right, so those are some of the strategies that we've identified to help build team and to focus on the similarities versus the differences of a generation. So we hope that you'll be able to use those. And we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive now into Generation Z. If you attended last year's webinar on Gen Z, it'll be a little bit of a review for you. So this might be a good time to play some Gummy Drop or Clash of Clans while you're waiting for the summary at the end.
There's a lot of great apps, a lot of great fun. I like Two Dots particularly.
Really?
It's really easy. All you need to make squares.
I'm addicted to Golf Clash right now,
Golf
which
Clash.
is that you play one hole online against another competitor from around the world.
See, I'm not big in the games where you are working against someone other than the computer. I don't know if that's a generational thing or not.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Gen Z. All right, so a little bit of some percentages here, which I like because that gives you an accurate representation of what's happening. So the YouTube, 52% of teens are using YouTube or other social media as a research tool. I can definitely see that in my own kids who are 15 and 17 right now. If they want to learn how to do something, they don't read the directions. They don't find a resource in the library. They look at a YouTube video to set it up. And I've started to do that as well, learning from them a little bit. I recently set up a fish aquarium in my basement, and it's been 15 years or so since I've done that. So I watched a couple of YouTube videos because that's what my kids would have done, and it was great. It worked really well.
Which is kind of funny because I was looking at some YouTube videos this week because I was looking to get just something to hold my phone case. And in all the videos I was looking at for reviews, no one was looking at any of the instructions. They were just opening the box and walking through it like they didn't need to read anything. I thought that was fascinating.
Right. And that goes along with expecting all the info to be at your fingertips, having the easy access. And then at least where some positive thing has come up as a part of the fake news generation is that we start to question a little bit about what we see online. So that's been a good thing, I guess. You can see 1 and 2 will be university educated, which will be an interesting thing going forward. They're making connections mostly via their online experiences. Well, not mostly, 41% of Gen Z spend greater than 3 hours per day on their computers for non-school work. That's definitely an underestimation if you have teenage boys who like online gaming. So that's something to be aware of going forward. They're consistently connected. And you can see that as a part of the work experience here as well. I think that's rubbing off on other generations too. Just like we just talked about with Matt's example in the class. To be connected 24/7 in a group chat kind of terrifies me as a Gen Xer because I'd like that work-life balance where we want to be separate from work. But I definitely have used a similar situation. I'm involved in theater, and I communicate with the casts from the shows that I'm in through group chats, and we plan activities through that, as well as some other activities that I've been a part of. So that can be really valuable as well.
So creative entrepreneurship. I mentioned earlier that entrepreneurship is something that has been growing from millennials, and especially now to Gen Z. And here we see 55% of Gen Zers polled by Universum, which is a survey that we pulled a lot of some of these statistics from. They said that they're interested in starting their own company. And you can absolutely see that here at the University of Iowa. We have majors focused on entrepreneurship, enterprise leadership. We have the Papa John program. There's a lot of interest in that. And there's students who want to be able to do their own thing and kind of create their own thing. And in many ways, also create a better world. A lot of students I'm talking to or in my classes, their interest in entrepreneurship is not simply to make money. It's simply so that they can have the freedom and control to make a difference and do something positive for the world or for at least their community. The view sharing is revenue generating a little bit, but also just that desire to be their own boss. And I think we've seen some of this pop up more and more with things becoming, more app focused. You think about Uber or Airbnb, and if you're not familiar with those, Uber is the new taxi version of trying to get a car, and you can use an app to find a taxi if in certain locations that'll pick you up, and it's just somebody's car that they have applied for through Uber, and they're now a taxi driver. They don't go through any formal taxi experience other than applying and getting approved by Uber, and they can set their own amounts for where they want to travel. Super big at airports in certain areas too now. And then Airbnb, I have yet to do an Airbnb. I don't know, Al, have you done an Airbnb yet?
I have not.
But Airbnb is the new hotel version. So people opening up their homes and condos, maybe summer homes, and saying, hey, if you want to come stay in my place for a day or longer, here's the price. And a lot of Gen Zers open to this, or creating apps to do these types of things. That go back to the creative entrepreneurship. Disasters and tragedies, I mentioned also myself, 9/11 happening and being a significant event in my life. I'm sure it was a significant event for many people. Many people may be watching this right now, and many Americans remember where they were that day. Well, that happened for many of these folks, Gen Z, in kindergarten when they were very young. So they may not remember that day exactly, but everything since then has been their life. And so they have seen all of the changes in how we are politically, what we do at airlines, what we do in terms of safety and traffic. And that has become their life. They don't know something different than that for the most part. And they may think that the world is not a safe place, or it could be kind of scary. They also grew up during a recession, so they know that money is a significant thing to think about, and they're coming to college specifically thinking about, what do I do if I don't have enough money to pay? How am I going to pay for college? And the last thing being cyberbullying. So we're seeing bullying coming out of the physical in-class type environment, and it's happening online. It's happening through social media. It's happening when they're going to a chat room, whether they're working on Facebook or Twitter, and it's not always visible to everyone else. And so that's something that they're dealing with and trying to work through that the best they can, possibly.
When you think about leadership, we're going to see a large increase in multiracial population from the last 17, 18 years. We've got more women and people of color in leadership roles, and there's just a lot of different opportunities that we've been able to see over the last several years, which has been very positive. Let's see, well, you can see the details within the boxes there, and that's really key as a part of this generation that's growing up. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out too is that as we go through these slides, all the generations before Gen Z are going through these things and these experiences as well, when there are different changes in the population and that kind of thing. So we're having these experiences together, whether or not they're of value or whether or not they're valued at the same way by each generation. It varies depending on the generation and the individual people. Social justice is also key as a part of this, the coming generation, and 60% of Gen Zers are wanting jobs that have social impact. We see that a lot here in the Career Center. We go back to the Universum studies. I see that every year for the last several years, that making an impact, being able to work, not necessarily in a job that makes a difference itself, but working for a company or organization that is making a difference can be just as valuable for people that are seeking positions right now. So that's very important, and something that should should be included in job descriptions, if at all possible, how your company or organization is making an impact within the community that you're a part of, or how that particular role will make an impact within the society that those students are going to be working in or being a part of. It's very important to this population as they start to job search.
Finances, I mentioned a little bit earlier, finance is playing a huge role, knowing that many of the Gen Zers grew up during a recession and how that might have affected them and their families. 56% of Gen Zers say they were savers, not spenders. They probably still are savers and not spenders. So thinking very wisely about their money and how they use it. budget cuts for them are a reality. So they know that budgets can get cut, and they're trying to be possibly more financially conservative. If you remember earlier, we're talking about how there was some conservativeness coming out of Gen Z, and I think this is where that comes from, especially thinking about, a little more about risk and reward when it comes to finances and how they're going to pay for things, and is it worth their time and energy. Personal characteristics, again, plenty of stats, numbers. 4 and 5 high school Gen Zers feel they are more driven than their peers. 8 seconds being the average American attention span. Al mentioned that earlier. Sure, it may feel like even less sometimes when I'm talking to some students. Even just 1 second attention span sometimes I would ask for or hope for, but that happens with others too. I definitely don't think that is just a generational issue, but something to keep in mind for Gen Z.
They're fairly strongly motivated, especially by relationships. And I think that that's coming through with all the group work that happens both at the high school level and the college level. People are being asked to work in teams on a regular basis. I think that's a part of what's happening in classrooms. So they're held accountable by each other. I think that's pretty common in the workplace that's happening right now too. So you can see that happening as a part of this incoming population. And when they think about the future, they're more optimistic, but at 60%, and that's decreased a little bit from Gen Y, for example. And then 56% of the Gen Z expects to have a better lifestyle than their parents, compared to 71% of millennials. So maybe more realistic based on some of these overall. But again, that's about 56%. And then concerned about impact on the planet, for sure. So that's something that's really key. I think that comes up in the Universum surveys as well, and the impact that we're making. This is a little bit small, so I hope you can see it, but it talks a little bit about technology and the percentage of people who use the following devices multiple times a day. So TV is still really high for both. The age ranges there, 13 to 17 in the pink, and 8 through 12 in the gray. So it drops off a little bit for cell phone use for the 8 through 12ers. And then laptop, and you can see the following numbers there. I don't know that we mentioned this, but you will be able to get copies of these, the slide deck and the webinar, if you'd like, after we're done. So we'll have those sent out to people that have attended. For some reason, the slide is getting cut off a little bit here. So let me see if I can tell you. Do you have the full slide printed on? No, you're just cut off too. So basically what it's saying is that, do you express yourself with emojis? Gen Z would say, yes, they do. And it's #awesome or something, I think is what it says at the bottom. They definitely prefer multitasking. And then I think I've been influenced by this, using the multiple screens as well. I think I've caught myself with at least 4 screens at a time, using my Apple Watch, my iPad, and or my phone, with a laptop while watching the Cubs play. So
everything has a screen. I mean, it's hard not to not have a screen in front of you nowadays.
The bottom line says texting over email, and that instant, and phone, and that instant gratification that's part of that.
That person owns a lot of screens, though.
Look at all that.
That is a lot of screens. Too many screens.
What is that? Is that a reader?
I think that's, yeah, it looks like maybe first version of a Kindle or something.
Old school. Kicking it old school.
Last but not least, as we wrap up Gen Z, is role models. Top role models for this group is parents. And what we're seeing from parents, if you remember the term helicopter parents, those are the parents, especially for millennials, that were coming in and doing everything for their children, and trying to possibly get in the way, especially in higher education, to make sure that everything is safe for their children. What we're seeing a little bit more now is parents being co-pilots and helping their children, but not trying to hover around too much, more so acting as a partner along the whole way. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. A lot of stuff, and part of this is taken from different Gen Z texts that we'll have and show you at the end in our citations and references. Corey C. Miller is an author of one of the texts who says co-piloting very positive, very good, because it's not having the parent do everything for the student. But at the same time, I've seen students that they can't make a decision before they check with their parent. And we have some statistics here, I forget what they are, but at orientation we share how much our students nowadays, incoming students, are texting and talking to parents, and it's multiple times a day. And I think about my experience in college, and I would go weeks without talking to my parents, and I can't imagine talking, with my parents on a daily basis and multiple times. But I know students who are doing it, and they're going to need to be able to function as well at some point without their parents there. So kind of good and bad, pros and cons there. So some takeaways. We're going to talk about takeaways for Gen Z, and then we'll wrap things up with takeaways for the generations at work as a whole. Most problems for Gen Z stem from increasing economic insecurity and inequality of contemporary society. So thinking about how we as a society are thinking about money, finances, obviously the political landscape and what their interests are, the cost of college being a huge issue there. They're open more to streaming meetings, and they would like to do things online and possibly have interviews online. I would also put out there that they need practice doing that. Part of what we do in the Career Leadership Academy is help them practice that, because they're interested in it, but they don't always have the best skills. And so making sure that they have a chance to practice those things, just like any other skills they would be doing. We're at the point now where we allow phones in our courses. I know some people think that's a very big faux pas, but we've found they're going to bring it anyways. So making it clear that they can have it, but what are the rules in terms of using it and utilizing it? And sometimes there are so many classes now and just classrooms on campus that already have the technology built in. Trying to keep the technology out is not going to work. It's trying to set up those rules and boundaries for when it's appropriate to do it. And also setting those within your own staff meetings and thinking about where you work in your organization, how you're role modeling using technology. Teaching when it's appropriate in the workplace. I'm not going to go through all that because I already talked about it. And then creating opportunities for independent work. If we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurship from this group, give them some time and some ability to be able to work on their own if it's not there, if you can. They're highly aware of racism, social justice. They may want to know during interview questions, what's your company's culture look like? What are your policies related to racism, social justice? Are those things that are explained in your value statement? So those are things that I know students in my classes are asking, and they're researching and thinking about when they're looking for companies to work at. Communicating via images, using less text. Certainly, the professional email, those are things that aren't going away, and we're trying to teach our students. But even just thinking about your website or how you're displaying your organization in print media. Are you using images? Are you using video? Are you using mediums that are going to connect with Gen Z and show off how awesome it is to work at your place? And for anyone, whether it's Gen Z or Boomer, getting people to think about the benefits of working at an employer is really helpful. Using snackable content, small bits to do outreach, and just staying aware of changes in social media. Have you heard of Twitch? I have no idea what Twitch is, but it's one of those new social media things that's out there. And I would probably want to know, if I'm going to be a social media coordinator or going to have social media be a part of my company, what are some of the avenues that my potential new talent is using for communicating with each other?
Yeah, we just talked today at a staff meeting. Are you using Instagram or Snapchat, or how are you using all the kind of fun stuff that everybody's hearing about? When you talk about generations at work, it's kind of a summary of the things that we've talked about today. We really want to encourage people to focus on getting to know the individual versus defining people as their generation. Making sure that we encourage supervisors to identify specifically what motivates each individual worker and each individual staff member, and how they can work in a team together if that's important, especially when building collaborative relationships, either in a mentoring scenario or just specifically working together. There are some organizations that have mentoring programs for entry-level positions where they pair a new staff member with a more seasoned employee, just so that they can have that non-supervisory relationship where they can talk about different things that are happening at work and being a part of that. And that's a great way to share the different perceptions and things, that skills that are a part of each of those person's identity. Identifying shared goals and needs, encouraging strengths and skills, and identifying those. And then recognizing and rewarding based on individual motivations. And I mean, that's different for every person, individual, not necessarily a generation. I don't think generations are necessarily defined by that. I mean, there's some trends, obviously, that we've talked about today, but really identifying how people like to be rewarded and communicated with is really important as a part of that. And then we hope that today we've helped you to avoid overgeneralizing and stopping the reinforcement of those generational stereotypes. It's kind of unavoidable when you talk about generations, and to help define them a little bit, but I want to encourage people to really identify the individual strengths and skills. All right, we've got a reference section here that will allow you to do more research if you'd like to, and then like I said, we'll be sending out this information as people who attended the webinar today. And we want to thank you for joining us. And if you have specific questions, or if there's something that you'd like us to touch on before we finish today, I want to definitely thank you for being a part of the webinar today. It looks like we have a couple of comments here, so we'll take a few seconds to read those and give you a chance to type in. So thanks for joining us. If you're heading out, if you're sticking around, we'll talk to you here in a second. Now we have a comment about a Gen Z intern who was watching some videos and during their first day of work, and being asked specifically not to do that, and then texting back and forth with a girlfriend and playing games on the phone and that kind of thing. And that's something that's really key to establish what the expectations are with social media and with the technology that's available. Making sure to establish the boundaries as a part of that. And it can be a challenge, and it's something that I think it can be important to help peers mentor each other in that way, and to hold each other accountable as a part of that. Maybe it's setting specific goals with regards to the work that needs to get done, regardless of the technology that they're using during that time. And I think it reflects a little bit the desire of this particular student to have work-life balance that involves 24/7 work, and maybe that would mean establishing the specific goals for meeting those deadlines. What do you think, Ben?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I can tell you from our own personal experience, professional experience, really, we've had interns come in, and just on day one, we've shared with them in their workspace, they're not allowed to watch Netflix. They're not allowed to have that streaming or going on a separate iPad there. But because it's in a busy area that people go through, they're absolutely okay to have a pair of earphones and listen to music and things. But keeping an idea of their nonverbals and the message they're sending by having those things there. It's not a matter of can they do it, are they able to multitask? It's having them kind of identify and understand, like, how does it feel and how does it show to other people if that's going on in the background, and setting up your culture. Just if it is not going to allow that, that's not allowed, and from day one. And it's a great learning lesson for them, especially if they've been working someplace else where it was allowed for them, and they're learning that not every place is the same.
It doesn't look like we have any other questions or comments at this point, but we hope that you'll give us some feedback when you get the survey about this particular webinar. We hope you've learned some great things today, or at least thought about some things in a different way. So thanks for joining us. there's at least one more webinar coming up this summer, so check our website for that information. And we have some great events coming up on campus. So please check out the Career Center's website at careers.uiowa.edu. We'd be glad to help you with anything that you have as far as questions or concerns about things that are coming up. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.